The galaxy had seen countless conquests, but rarely resistance. The Empire ruled through terror, diplomacy by intimidation, and the kind of technological supremacy that left lesser species scrambling to appease rather than oppose. Humanity was supposed to be one more compliant addition, a species so new to the stars that it could be bent with little effort. That assumption would prove to be their first and most fatal mistake. The incident began quietly, almost too small to matter to an empire spanning thousands of systems. 10 human students, part of an interstellar cultural exchange, disappeared in transit between 2 neutral stations. The Empire's patrol logs listed the attack as a security intervention. The captured youths were described in an internal communique as specimens rather than citizens. To the Empire, they were leverage. To humanity, they were family. News traveled at the speed of light, and outrage traveled even faster. On Earth, Mars, and the O'Neill colonies, faces on every screen mirrored the same expression, disbelief turning to fury. Politicians met in emergency session. The United Earth Assembly's chambers filled with voices, not bickering, but uncharacteristic unity. In orbit, admirals and generals abandoned protocol to draft immediate plans. To anyone watching from beyond, it might have seemed chaotic. In truth, it was a raw efficiency of a species that had been forged by constant crisis on its own homeworld. The Empire dismissed human protests. Diplomatic envoys were rebuffed with curt declarations. The students were under investigation for violating imperial security. This fiction did not survive contact with intercepted transmissions. The abductees were being transported to a classified research world. Not a single human leader spoke of negotiation again. In council after council, the decision was unanimous. Recover the captives by any means necessary. Factories on Luna switched production from mining drones to weapons platforms. Civilian traffic in the Sol system slowed as shipyards worked around the clock. Black-budget projects that were not supposed to exist were dragged out of hidden vaults. Stealth corvettes, advanced cyber warfare suites, prototypes with more power than reliability. Humanity did not have fleets to match the Empire, but had something far more dangerous, an ability to improvise under pressure. The Empire's observers misunderstood this energy. To them, human anger was primitive emotion, irrelevant in strategic calculus. Their analysts cataloged humanity's capabilities, weighing firepower against imperial might. They saw no contest. 10 unarmed students did not justify a war. They believed this not because it was logical, but because they had never encountered a species that treated the lives of its young as sacred, worth the blood of entire fleets. While alien strategists drew their charts, human engineers rewrote software, built weapons faster than theory could keep up, and held joint drills with crews who had been civilians 2 weeks prior. Hackers on Titan cracked imperial encryption protocols. AI systems optimized hyperspace routes for speed over safety. Humanity's strength was not numbers or ships. It was refusal to accept that any citizen could be taken without answer. The abduction became personal to every man, woman, and child in human space. News feeds broadcast the names of the 10, students, researchers, artists, dreamers. Their families appeared on screen, not begging, but promising that humanity would come. Crowds filled streets, not in panic, but in solidarity. The call was not save them, but bring them home. When leaders promised to act, there was no dissent. For the first time in centuries, humanity spoke with one voice. The Empire's arrogance deepened. Their state media dismissed humanity's mobilization as emotional theater, an attempt to bluff its way out of humiliation. They underestimated how much humans valued commitment over appearance. They believed humanity would posture, threaten, and then submit to reality. They did not understand that for humanity, this was reality, a species that had survived its own brutality, its own wars, and had emerged with a single iron principle: no one gets left behind. In subterranean war rooms and orbital command stations, the plan took form. The fleet would not approach openly. The mission would not rely on overwhelming strength. It would rely on speed, deception, and precision. War was coming, but first would come a rescue operation so audacious that no alien power believed it possible. The 10 students were moved to a research installation deep in Imperial space. Their captors debated whether to ransom them or dissect them. Security was increased, not because the Empire feared a rescue, but because they feared scandal if their treatment of sentience was exposed. The prisoners heard rumors, fragments of intercepted human transmissions, whispers of fleets mobilizing. Their hope was fragile, but it burned hotter with each passing day. As humanity prepared, strange alliances formed. Corporations donated freighters to be gutted and rebuilt as gunships. Civilian scientists abandoned their labs to join cyber warfare units. Retired veterans volunteered to command ships that technically did not exist. In the dark between stars, test engines overloaded and blew apart, only to be replaced and rebuilt faster than before. The species that had once fought over scraps of land was now fighting together for 10 lives. Diplomatic channels fell silent. The last message humanity sent to the Empire was short and unencrypted. Return them unharmed. It received no reply. On Earth, the council chambers emptied. On Luna, assembly lines ran without pause. On Mars, prototype frigates rolled out of dry dock, with hulls still warm. No one talked of peace. The only question left was how far they would have to go. The first fleet departed Sol under strict radio silence. Not a ceremonial launch, not a parade. No journalists recorded their departure. They slipped into hyperspace like ghosts, guided by AI navigators and captains chosen for their willingness to disobey standing orders when necessary. These ships carried no illusions. Every crew knew this mission might be one way. Yet not a single volunteer turned back. Far beyond human borders, the Empire's officials continued their routine. Reports of missing patrols and unusual sensor ghosts were filed away as anomalies. Human reconnaissance units tested the edges of Imperial security, mapping routes, jamming signals, learning the weaknesses of bureaucracy too slow to respond. Every outpost hit was chosen carefully, never enough to trigger open war, but enough to gather data. The students, unaware of the exact scope of humanity's response, clung to hope as conditions worsened. They were confined to sterile rooms, monitored by cold instruments. When guards spoke, it was to mock the idea that humans would ever dare challenge the Empire. Yet in hushed moments, some guards whispered uneasily about distant attacks, about humans striking supply lines with uncharacteristic precision. The captives did not know if these rumors were true, but they believed them because they wanted to believe. The fleet emerged from hyperspace on the edge of Imperial space, engines cycling low to stay invisible to long-range sensors. Stealth systems hummed, absorbing scans, deflecting signals. Humanity had no illusions. This was hostile territory, and every minute spent here carried risk of discovery. The crews were silent, focused. There were no grand speeches, no ceremonial music, just the hard rhythm of calculations and course corrections. Every jump brought them closer to the captives and closer to war. The first strikes were surgical. Outlying Empire outposts vanished from a map without warning. Patrol stations stopped transmitting after brief flashes of static. Imperial analysts dismissed the disappearances as sensor faults, pyre activity, or rogue elements inside their own borders. They could not imagine humans had slipped so far into their domain so quickly. The attackers left no wreckage, only silence and gaps in surveillance. These were not battles, they were rehearsals. Data flowed back to human command in real time, refining every maneuver, every jump vector, every weapons test. Humanity was learning its enemy faster than the Empire believed possible. Each move served a rescue, but each victory hinted at something larger. Human crews adjusted on the fly, improvising tactics that alien war doctrines had never accounted for. AI units didn't simply execute plans. They rewrote them mid-mission, handing control to whichever commander had the clearest shot. Decentralized authority turned every ship into a predator, not just an extension of a rigid fleet structure. In contrast, Imperial warships waited for orders that arrived too late to matter. Deep in captivity, the 10 students endured interrogations, medical scans, and threats designed to break them. They were told their homeworld had abandoned them, that no one would risk war for 10 unarmed youths. The Guard believed these lies themselves because their empire always sacrificed a few for the many. What they didn't understand was that humanity measured value differently. Each captive heard rumors whispered by frightened technicians about attacks in nearby sectors. Strange human signals impossible to jam. Hope became defiance. They stopped cooperating entirely. The Empire began to notice the pattern. Outposts along a single vector were disappearing. Supply lines started running dry in remote sectors. An Imperial admiral demanded reinforcements, only to be told by his superiors that no civilized species would start a war over a handful of civilians. Humanity's fleet proved them wrong within days. The first direct engagement came without warning. A lone Imperial frigate detected something it shouldn't have. Human drive signatures where none should be, and attempted to broadcast an alert. The signal never left the ship. Plasma rounds ripped through its hull before it could send more than a fragment of a warning. The wreck drifted cold, its crew dead, its systems erased by human boarding teams in minutes. The attack left Imperial Command puzzled and alarmed. Humans were not bluffing. Every hour mattered. Recon units infiltrated deeper, hacking Imperial networks, tracing encrypted communications. The captive's location was confirmed on a heavily guarded research world with planetary shields and orbital defenses. Humanity didn't turn back. The fleet didn't grow cautious. Instead, it moved faster. More ships jumped in from secret docks near Neptune, loaded with munitions, so knew they still smelled of raw alloy. On every vessel, the same understanding pulsed. This wasn't just rescue anymore. This was war, whether the Empire admitted it or not. Imperial fleets mobilized too late, moving to choke off the intrusion. They expected humans to panic, to retreat at the first sign of serious resistance. Instead, human ships slipped between patrols, cutting through unguarded lanes. Communications blackouts left Imperial units blind and isolated. Where battles occurred, they were sharp and decisive. A destroyer squadron would appear out of nowhere, strike like lightning, and vanish back into hyperspace, leaving wreckage cooling in its wake. Losses occurred on the human side. Ships damaged, crews injured, but every setback was analyzed and adapted within hours. What would take alien militaries months to learn, humans absorbed in a single night. On Earth and Mars, live data feeds were filtered for public consumption. Citizens didn't see the full cost yet, only the victories. But within command circles, no one underestimated the risk. This mission demanded sacrifice, and sacrifice was being given freely. Entire families sent messages to the fleet. If you fall, others will take your place. The will of a species was not measured in ships, but in resolve. The Empire tried diplomacy. A message was broadcast into human space, claiming the students were being protected during an investigation. Humanity answered by jamming every Imperial frequency and continuing the advance. The message wasn't for humans anyway. It was for Imperial citizens, to assure them that nothing was wrong. That lie crumbled when convoys stopped arriving on time, and starports whispered about strange attackers that kill without warning and never spoke a word. Human cyber warfare units tore through Imperial databases, seizing navigational data, identifying fleet movements, exposing vulnerabilities in their own command structure. In weeks, humanity knew more about the Empire's border sectors than the Empire's own governors. War wasn't coming. War had already begun, and humanity was winning the intelligence battle. As the rescue fleet approached its target, resistance stiffened. Larger Imperial task forces appeared, finally realizing the scale of the intrusion. These were no longer skirmishes, but pitched battles. Human ships darted through asteroid belts, using terrain as cover, something Imperial captains considered dishonorable and inefficient. Human frigates struck supply depots, leaving crippled stations burning. The Empire could not mass its forces fast enough. The students' guards grew nervous. Surveillance officers intercepted fragments of human transmissions too clear to dismiss. Inbound units estimated 70 hours. The prisoners shared the news in whispered excitement. They were chained and isolated, but their spirits were unbroken. When interrogators threatened death, the captives smiled. That terrified their captors more than any weapon. The fleet's losses increased as it neared the research world. A corvette vanished during a deep jump test. Crew presumed lost. Another ship took heavy damage during an ambush, refusing to break formation even as its hull cracked. Salvage drones recovered the survivors, and the mission pressed on without pause. Every casualty fueled more determination. Humanity had a habit alien powers could not comprehend. Pain did not weaken them, it focused them. Imperial commanders called in reinforcements from nearby sectors, abandoning trade lanes and leaving border colonies undefended. They still clung to the belief that humans would only strike once, rescue their own, and leave. They failed to see that each clash was forging a new doctrine of war, a doctrine built for expansion. The Empire thought it faced an isolated mission. In truth, it faced a rehearsal for a total conflict. The assault force hit the ground running. Pods tore open as shock troopers stormed through smoke and debris, cutting to defenders with precise bursts. Human armor was light, fast, and lethal at close range, designed to exploit every weakness Imperial infantry possessed. Imperial soldiers, trained to expect drawn-out set-piece battles, panicked when the attack came from multiple angles at once, guided by live intelligence fed from orbit. Every corridor breached, every barricade bypassed, every guard silenced. Inside the research complex, alarms blared as security scrambled to contain the impossible. Human strike teams did not waste time on prolonged firefights. They moved like predators, bypassing locked bulkheads with shaped charges, hacking control rooms, disabling automated turrets with electromagnetic pulses. Every second was counted. If the Empire decided to erase the prisoners rather than lose them, there would be no time for second chances. Above the planet, the fleet held formation under relentless pressure. Imperial warships surrounded the orbit, hurling plasma and rail slugs in murderous volleys. Human vessels danced between the salvos, micro-jumping through gaps, trading armor for positioning, refusing to break the blockade. Damaged ships did not retreat. They stayed to shield the dropships below. A corvette burned out its engines holding the line and was vaporized, but its death bought 3 minutes for reinforcements to land. Every sacrifice was accepted without hesitation. In their cells, the 10 students felt the tremors as walls buckled. A blast door cracked under the impact of a breaching charge, and human soldiers in matte black armor surged through. No words were exchanged. The rescuers identified their targets, cut restraints, and moved. The captives had been told no one would come for them. Now they were being carried out under gunfire, protected by soldiers who would rather die than fail. Imperial officers tried to rally a counterattack, but confusion reigned. Communications were jammed. Orders never reached the front lines. Automated defenses turned against their operators after human hackers seized control. In orbit, an Imperial flagship attempted to bring its main guns to bear on the facility, but human destroyers intercepted, ramming at full acceleration to throw off the firing solution. The shot went wide, obliterating an empty desert instead of prisoners. Extraction moved with brutal efficiency. The students were rushed through breach points to waiting drop pods. Human soldiers formed moving walls of armor, covering every angle. One rescuer was cut down holding a doorway, but his squad dragged him clear rather than abandon him. No one would be left behind. The prisoners were loaded aboard and launched skyward as fighters tore through interceptors to clear their path. Above the atmosphere, the rescue fleet bled to hold position. Hulls glowed red-hot. Shields failed under sustained bombardment, but no ship broke formation. As the drop pods ascended, human warships opened every weapon port and returned fire with savage precision. Orbital defense stations erupted into debris fields. Imperial ships, expecting an easy kill, found themselves trading blows against an enemy that refused to retreat even when outnumbered. The pods docked. Medics secured the students and confirmed their identities. A signal went out, target secured. At that moment, the fleet had the option to disengage. Instead, they pressed the attack. Imperial command still believed this was a rescue and nothing more. But humanity was delivering a message. Any power that threatened its people would be answered with war. As the fleet jumped out of gravity well, Imperial reinforcements arrived, only to find wreckage and silence. They gave chase, but the humans were already gone, scattering along unpredictable hyperspace vectors. The students were safe, but humanity was not finished. The mission had proven what human forces could do. The next phase would prove what they would do to anyone who crossed them. The Empire demanded negotiations. Humanity refused. Messages were sent, intercepted, ignored. The response from Earth and its colonies was simple: release all information on those responsible or face open conflict. The Empire balked. They had never dealt with a species unwilling to compromise, unwilling to accept any price on the lives of its citizens. The war escalated. Human fleets launched strikes deep into Imperial supply lines, not as rescue missions now, but as deliberate punishment. Asteroids were diverted to crash into uninhabited Imperial depots. Cyber warfare crippled starports without firing a shot. Propaganda spread through alien networks, showing images of 10 rescued students standing alive under human banners. Proof that the Empire could be defied. Imperial admirals tried to adapt, but their rigid command structures collapsed under pressure. Humanity's strength lay not in numbers but in adaptability. Every engagement fed back into a learning network that updated tactics on the fly. Losses were absorbed instantly, lessons weaponized within hours. Alien analysts stared in disbelief as a species barely a century into interstellar flight outmaneuvered fleets 10 times its size. The Empire retaliated with overwhelming force, striking human colonies on the fringes of explored space. Civilian evacuations were conducted in hours, not days. Where civilians couldn't be moved, underground shelters shielded them while mobile defense batteries shredded incoming forces. Human populations refused to panic. They fought back, civilians manning weapons alongside soldiers. The message was unmistakable. Every human was a combatant when threatened. In high orbit above Mars, a war council assembled. Not politicians, but strategists, admirals, engineers, and civilian representatives. They didn't argue over whether to fight. They planned how to win. Production lines expanded, new shipyards lit up, and black projects once too dangerous to test were deployed into combat. Humanity had no intention of waiting for the Empire's next move. The turning point came in a battle near an Imperial trade hub. Human forces feigned retreat, drawing the Empire's fleet into a gravitational trap around a neutron star. At the critical moment, human ships micro-jumped behind the enemy formation and opened fire at point-blank range. Imperial losses were catastrophic. For the first time in centuries, their navy was forced into full retreat. The galaxy took notice. Other species watched silently, some in fear, others in admiration. Diplomatic overtures flooded human space. Powers once dismissive now offered alliances. Humanity accepted none. This was not a war for prestige or territory. This was retribution, and would end only when the Empire admitted defeat. Eventually, the Empire cracked, faced with mounting losses, destabilized supply chains, and unrest within its own territories. Imperial leadership agreed to unconditional talks. Humanity made no concessions. The demand was simple. Those responsible for the abduction would be handed over to face trial, and any further aggression would be met with annihilation. The Empire complied.